Thank you everyone for being here. My name is Leslie Hendrickson. I'm with the Newburyport Literary Festival. Quick things before I turn it over to our author, Elena Dillon. This session's going to be about 25 to 30 minutes with questions. Please use the Q&A tab below. And I see there's one question right now that you all can see and hear us, but you don't appear on the screen. No, you are not going to appear on the screen. This is a webinar. It's a slightly different format, and it's not a meeting. So it's just going to be me and Elena on the screen, and eventually just Elena. I would suggest you put it on speaker view so you can just see her. And again, I want you to please put your questions in the Q&A tab. I'll be monitoring that for questions. In the chat, you will find some more information about other events today, as well as links to our independent bookstore partners, Bookshop of Beverly Farms and Jabberwocky. They have all the books from all the authors on our festival, and we encourage you to support them or your local bookstore. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Elena Dillon. Thank you so much for being here. She's the author of Mercy House.
Thank you so much for having me. I was looking forward to, so I've been attending the Newburyport Literary Festival for a few years now. We moved to the area, we're in Beverly, about 5 years ago. So I was so psyched to have my first book out, and I was gonna go to the Newburyport Festival, and then disappointed when it couldn't happen, but thrilled that they were so creative and brave and adventurous in starting the first virtual literary festival. So thank you for all the efforts that it took to arrange this, and for still having me. I'm so thrilled to be here and to be able to reach out to everybody here. 87 participants right now. That's so awesome. 88, it just keeps ticking up. So I want to talk to you about Mercy House. Mercy House is my debut novel. It came out in February, and it's been exciting. So I'm going to read today, but before I do that, I just wanted to give you a little bit of backstory. So I'll tell you a little bit about the synopsis, and then the inspiration behind the novel, and then I'll jump into the reading, and then we'll take questions. So Mercy House is about Sister Evelyn, a 69-year-old nun in Brooklyn, New York, who is investigated by the Vatican for breaking church doctrine and how she operates her women's shelter. And the man, the bishop who comes to investigate her, is an individual with whom she shares a very dark history. I came up with the idea for this novel when I was working at St. Joseph's College in Long Island, which is run by nuns. And it was kind of my first interaction with nuns. I grew up Episcopalian. My dad's family is Catholic, and my husband's family is Catholic. My great nun was actually a nun, but my great aunt was a nun, but she left after Vatican II. So this was really my first interaction with nuns, and I kind of had this perception of them as maybe sterile, pious, perfect, and I was so excited to find how interesting they are and complicated and human. And of course they are humans, but we have this perception of them as being, habited individuals. So so they had their own jealousies and their own competitions. I saw them dancing to It's Raining Men at a holiday party, and they were just so devoted and so supportive, and it really inspired me. They were in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and worked long hours at their positions at the college. And then after those shifts, when I would go home and get in my sweatpants and watch Netflix, they would go on to work extra shifts at a mother house or at a women's shelter. And so they were just tireless, and they weren't paid. And they just did this because it was their life's mission. And then when I was there in 2010, I heard that they were being investigated by the Vatican. So this book is based on the actual investigation that the Vatican conducted in 2010. So the cardinal at the time, Cardinal Rodet, thought that nuns or religious sisters were becoming too secular-minded, had too much of a feminist spirit, maybe were promoting social justice more than they were promoting church doctrine. So he launched this investigation that they would visit every order of American nuns to make sure that they were keeping in line. Because nuns, they're as varied as any individuals. There's the very conservative orders and the very progressive orders, and they wanted to keep the progressive orders, make sure that they were kind of following the rules. So that's the setting for this book. I gave my characters something to hide. They have something to hide when they are being investigated. So that's kind of the main tension, which a lot of orders did. And when I was there at the college, that this struck me, that how they must be feeling if they were being investigated and they have something to hide. Being 50, 60, 70, 80 years old, they have no savings, no homes that they own themselves. So what would happen? What was at stake for them if there was something found and they were excommunicated? It must have been a very insecure time and a very outraged time, because they are so committed, and yet they now are being held accountable and being made to prove their faith, when that same institution was protecting men that shouldn't have been protected and that should have been held accountable. So there's the spiel. I'm going to jump in and start reading from Mercy House. And again, thank you for joining me. We're now at 97 people. That's so cool. Okay. Sister Evelyn knew she was on call that night. It was her turn to answer any knocks or rings after midnight. And so when she heard the first tentative rap at the door, she groaned and pried one eyelid open just enough to read the red numbers glaring from the digital clock on her bedside table. 2:43 a.m., an ungodly hour. Evelyn burrowed deeper into her pillow. She'd answer the door. She would, after 30 more seconds of sweet rest. The second strike was more assertive. "Get your lazy bones out of bed, Evie," Sister Josephine called from the neighboring room. "This is your calling, after all." Evelyn struggled up onto an elbow. "If you're awake enough to be clever, you're awake enough to answer the door yourself." She was satisfied with that response and waited 20, then 40 seconds for Josephine to stir. When her housemate ignored her, Evelyn sighed, pushed herself upright, and began the painful process of extricating herself from bed. Ever since Evelyn entered the convent 50 years ago and was required to rise with the sun, she worshipped sleep like it was a false god. But now that Evelyn was 69, the physical difficulty of making her way from her cot to the ground was a relatively recent development. Her body had thickened, her bones had become brittle, and her joints were stiff and reluctant to bend. Every inch of her skeleton creaked when used, but gouty arthritis precipitated the worst of it. The condition swelled her toe, tightened her ankle, and sent a burning ache through her knee. The slightest movement was a reminder of her nearly decade-long status as a senior citizen. Certainly when God created man, he knew human life expectancy would eventually extend. Couldn't he have designed the aging process to be just a bit more graceful? Even half a century after her formation period, Evelyn could still hear the response of her first Mother Superior. "Who are you, young novice, to question the will of Almighty God?" Hobbling around in the darkness of her bedroom, Evelyn muttered, "Forgive me, Lord, I am but your meek and humble servant. But you, Mother Superior, you can kiss my fat Irish ass." Evelyn tucked an arm through the sleeve of her ratty bathrobe and winced as she laced the terry cloth around her other shoulder. As she slipped her puffy feet into moccasins whose insoles retained her impressions, her bladder stung with fullness. She had to pee. She always had to pee. She shuffled toward the bathroom just as another thump on the front door echoed up the stairs, for crying out loud. She'd have to delay relieving herself, which was just as well. It meant she wouldn't capture a peek in the mirror of the disheveled face she was presenting to this newcomer. Because of her matronly shape and dowdy gray hair, one of her former residents said she looked like Flora, Sleeping Beauty's fairy godmother, if Flora had been fired, lost her wand, and was forced to live on the street. With that in mind, Evelyn braced the thick wooden banister and descended the Mercy House staircase step by careful step. Mercy House was a safe haven for victims of domestic violence, founded and operated by Sister Evelyn, Sister Josephine, and Sister Maria, nuns of the Order of the Sisters of St. Joseph of Mercy. Their 5-bedroom, 100-year-old row house in the Bedford-Stuyvesant neighborhood of Brooklyn was almost always at capacity. As Evelyn said, good for business, bad for humanity. In the entryway, Evelyn pressed the security code into the system's keypad, 0416, for Hebrews 4:16. Let us then approach God's throne of grace with confidence so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. Maria had chosen the verse because it contained 2 of her favorite words, grace and mercy. Evelyn had voted for 2836, numbers on the keypad that corresponded with atom, as in let me atom, because revenge was often her sinful impulse when she saw the battered women who arrived at their door. The other sisters didn't think this instinct should be condoned, and her suggestion was vetoed. When Evelyn pulled the door open, she found a girl whose skin was tan, even in winter, and whose black walnut hair was rigid with gel and coiled in miniature ringlets over her shoulders. Thick charcoal liner, smudged from crying, rimmed her eyelids. Her face acted as a history of her relationship with her assailant, and Evelyn's experienced eye, she was trained as a nurse in the convent and practiced medicine for many years, surveyed the girl's injuries. A fresh red welt circled from her cheekbone to her forehead like a swollen parenthesis, left open, to what, Evelyn didn't know. A scab, an older wound, ran vertically down her bottom lip like dried blood stitches, and her nose took a sudden detour in its center, a trademark break from a previous run-in. No matter how many times Evelyn saw such marks of violence, they still made her stomach turn. Beneath the bruising, there was softness to the girl's face that suggested her features were still developing. God had not yet finished his carving. Based on this and her still budding form, Evelyn guessed her age to be about 16. Sorry for knocking so much. I didn't know if you heard me. The words rushed from her mouth as though she were afraid she'd been followed and wanted to explain herself and get out of sight as quickly as possible. The girl squeezed her full, cracked lips together and then released them. I heard this was a place for, you know. Her stare darted from Evelyn to the uncertain night at her back. She faced Evelyn again and shrugged. Her eyes welled with fresh tears. Do you have room or what? Sister Evelyn had been doing this long enough to know she wouldn't sleep again for hours, maybe not until the following night, maybe not even then. She swallowed, opened the door fully, and gestured down the hallway. There's always room for one more. Evelyn twisted the cap off the rusty tea kettle and flipped on the sink faucet. She ignored the girl while the kettle filled, allowing her time to settle into her new surroundings and some privacy to apply the ice pack Evelyn had nonchalantly deposited onto the table. She'd also set out the ham and Swiss that had been sitting in the fridge. She made a sandwich every evening before bed, just in case a resident, current or newly arriving, needed a snack in the middle of the night. Evelyn loosed an unencumbered yawn without bothering to cover her mouth. The burner clicked 3 times before the flame caught. It never took long for Evelyn to become endeared to each of their residents, well, to most anyway. But when they first arrived, she had to remind herself, although this was just an ordinary day for her, just another interrupted night's sleep, just another stranger at her door, it was probably one of the worst nights of their lives. The girl sat hunched at the table with the ice pack pressed against the left side of her face. Her eyes cast about the kitchen as if something were about to jump out at her, but she just didn't know from where. Rage swam through Evelyn's veins and poisoned her heart. Let me at him. What's your name, dear? She asked. The girl straightened as if startled to remember she was not alone in the room. Lucia. Lucia. Evelyn reached into the cabinet and brought down 2 chipped mugs. One read in chunky hot pink letters, Best Sister Ever, a gift from a former resident of the house. The other read, What would Jesus brew? Evelyn couldn't remember the origins of the secondware, but it was her favorite. She reached back into the cabinet for tea bags, but then hesitated over the selection, black, green, or chamomile. This girl didn't seem the green tea type, and who really liked chamomile? Then again, judge not and all that crap. Black? Evelyn asked. Puerto Rican, Lucia said. The misunderstanding took a moment to register. I meant your choice of tea, dear. Oh, right. Her chin dipped, embarrassed. Yeah, black, whatever. Evelyn dropped a Lipton bag into each mug. Lucia is a fine name. Saint Lucia is one of only 8 women named in canon of the Mass. She was a virgin martyr. Lucia snorted. Yeah, well, I ain't no virgin. She was too young to make that remark so offhandedly, and frustration and sympathy for this girl bloomed anew. In all probability, her sexual experience was not voluntary. Evelyn wished she could detect in her traces of her young age, more naivety, more curiosity, more innocence, more joy. Virginity is about the only requirement for sainting a woman. Men need to have accomplished something, but women just need to have kept their legs crossed. Otherwise, you're guilty of bewitching a good man into sin, Evelyn said. The kettle hissed and she extinguished the flame. But from my experience, the whole virginity thing is overrated. Her stare casually drifted over to Lucia's, and she was satisfied to find raised eyebrows. Startling newcomers out of their funk was one of her routines. With Evelyn's coarse silver hair cut bluntly across her forehead and her lined expression permanently set into a scowl, nobody expected the gruff nun to have a sense of humor, especially not a crass one. Evelyn's lips pitched up into a grin to emphasize the gag, and then fell almost immediately. She was at once the joker and the straight man. Lucia's eyebrows pulled from surprise to suspicion, and an acrylic fingernail wandered up to her lip. She propped it between her teeth. So how does this work? From years of cooking, cleaning, carrying, and caring, Evelyn's hands were so thick and calloused, she thumbed the metal cap from the tea kettle spout without an oven mitt. Boiled water cascaded into the mugs. What do you mean? Evelyn asked. She pinched the paper tags and bobbed the tea bags until they were saturated with water and began to seep sepia. I mean, like, what do you do here? What do you do for someone like me? What do you want us to do? Evelyn asked. Lucia worked her lips together and then shrugged. Her eyes began to water, and she blinked her lids quickly to pat the tears down. Do you need medical attention? Evelyn glanced up at Lucia, again assessing the damage to her face, and wondering what hurt might be lurking beneath her clothing. Lucia shook her head. Evelyn knew not to press this early. She spooned sugar into each cup. Do you want to pray together? Lucia again indicated no. Girls very rarely responded to that suggestion from the onset. Prayer was too hokey, or perhaps too intimate. Prayer was something they agreed to only when they were ready, and often never at all. Evelyn pulled open the refrigerator, heaved out the jug of milk, and plunked a drop into each mug. The milk swirled independently in the tea and then blended, a foreign body assimilating. Do you want to talk about why you're here? Evelyn asked, and Lucia stared into her lap. Her chin jutted to the side. Evelyn stirred the cups, knowing the ceremony of tea. The boiling, brewing, mixing, and the heat of the ceramic between her hands would be a comfort all its own. She gripped the handles and shuffled toward the table. Her knee cried out with each step, and her square body rocked atop her limb. She placed one mug before Lucia, who appeared grateful for something on which to focus her attention. Then she dragged a chair out, clamped her teeth, braced herself, and lowered her body into the seat. She exhaled a groan and closed her eyes against a sear up her right leg. A resident had once offered her marijuana to treat the pain, but that was a slippery slope, and Evelyn knew from experience she had trouble maintaining her footing. You all right? Lucia asked in a tone that was more a comment on how Evelyn was so obviously not all right. Just another Tuesday morning. Evelyn swallowed and then reopened her eyes. Want some advice? Don't get old, she said, only afterward realizing from that angry lump that would last for weeks, Lucia was already well acquainted with pain. Lucia's fingers skimmed the edge of the plastic plate that held her sandwich. She didn't meet Evelyn's eyes when she asked, You got potato chips? Evelyn straightened. Hunger was a good sign, a very good sign. I have pretzels. Would you like some pretzels? She shook her head. I put chips in sandwiches. I like the crunch. Well, I hope this doesn't affect our Yelp review, Evelyn said, but she made a mental note to pick up some potato chips from the corner bodega later in the morning. She sensed that this girl, like so many, was in need of simple, healthy love, the kind without agenda or ulterior motive, and she prayed the girl would find it there. So that's the end of that section. I probably don't have time to read the whole other section. So we could take questions now if you wanted, or I could talk about another book that's coming out next year, or we could take questions and then I'll talk about that if we have time.
Why don't you quickly talk about your book that's coming out next year? And please, everyone, attendees, thanks so much for listening, and let me know if you have questions. Please use the Q&A thread.
Cool. Okay, so I just submitted final revisions for a book coming out April 1st, 2021. It's called The Happiest Girl in the World. That's with the same publisher, so I'm really excited to be continuing to work with my editor and that whole team at William Morrow. So it's about a girl who is training for the Olympics and a gymnast who's training for the Olympics and all of the ethical compromises that are required of the athlete and her family in pursuing greatness, that level of greatness. So it kind of, just like Mercy House, I was inspired by real events of social justice and wanted to investigate them further and then kind of turn them into a story. So it's about the culture of abuse that has been discussed in USA Gymnastics by coaches and by Larry Nassar in particular. I had to do a quick rewrite because it ended at the Olympics 2020, which is now not happening. It's being postponed, so I had to add a chapter about the virus because we can't extend this a year and not acknowledge the real change that is the world is experiencing right now, and then make a prediction for what the trials might look like next year, and hopefully it won't be too inaccurate. But it's called The Happiest Girl in the World, if I didn't mention that already, and yeah, that'll be out next year, and we're already looking at cover designs now, so it's
amazing. Congratulations. We do have a couple of questions. One is a quick question, which is the book in an electronic form? Can you get an ebook or a
definitely for Mercy House, they mean, yeah.
Great.
So yes, it's on Kindle or whatever reading device you have. It's also in audiobook, and I've the narrators are so talented. They won a bunch of narrator awards in February when the book came out, and in this book there are chapters from the point of view of the residents too, the women that come to the house, and each chapter is narrated with a different voice, with a different actress. So it has a really nice audio experience.
Very cool.
Yeah.
There are a couple questions about the nuns. Maria asked if it was based on a nun that you ever knew, but I don't think you sort of addressed that in the beginning, but maybe we can talk a little bit more about that.
Yes. So the main character, Evelyn, is based on a particular nun at St. Joseph's College in physical description and her personality a bit. And in fact, this opening scene, the part that I was reading from, is what the first idea I had for the book was from a story that I heard about this nun where she would leave and go do the overnight at the women's shelter, and then whenever anyone would knock on the door, she would groan just like Sister Evelyn did, and that struck me as such a human reaction, but not necessarily one you would expect from a nun. But then of course she would drag herself out of bed and then go answer. So that was kind of that hearing that story about the real nun at St. Joseph's College was kind of what got me so interested in nun right. life, like what calls you to that faith, and then the type of person you are.
Right. And so another attendee is asked about the interview, and how she really appreciated that you included that interview, and if
she read the book. Thank you.
And if you could talk a little bit about how the interview went, what it was like, what you learned, etc.
Sure, yeah. So there's an interview at the back of the book and like those extra materials with Sister Suzanne Frank, who works at St. Joseph's College, and she was actually my boss when I was there. So I worked at St. Joseph's College for 5 years, and she was just the most supportive. She always thanked us at the end of the day, even if we had spent most of the day on Facebook. She was always she made us peanut butter pie. She was just so funny and generous and kind. So we had a great relationship, and we're still in touch now because I still teach online at St. Joseph's College, even though I moved. So she has been really supportive and enthusiastic of this whole process, and I was able to ask her a couple questions, pick her brain now and then. And then when we were coming up with materials for the back of the book for possible book club discussions, my editor asked if I could interview a nun, and I was like, well, of course, Sister Suzanne. Well, of course. So yeah, she was very eager and helpful in doing that interview, and we just did it over email because I was living far from her at that time.
Gotcha. And we have one question about how the church responded to the book.
Yeah, I get that question a lot. So the church itself hasn't responded as a whole. So I have a bad habit of reading every single Goodreads review that comes up, and I've seen some mixed responses for people that are Catholic. So they'll say, I'm Catholic and I loved this book, or I'm Catholic and here are my hesitations or my issues with the book. And I can understand why someone would feel a little defensive or the need to protect their faith. So to those people, I would just like to say that although there are Catholic characters in this book who commit wrongdoings, there are also so many Catholic characters that I hope show my deep admiration for the faith and for practitioners of the faith, like all the nuns. I love the nuns, and there's some good priests too. So hopefully it's a balance, and just a criticism against an individual is not a criticism against the entire faith. Right.
A few folks have asked about your path to becoming a writer, whether you are self-taught, you went to school, how you got support, and then your path to publication and how it worked to get an agent and a book deal. And so, you know, Could you give us
Condensed 10 years into a 1 minute answer. So it was not an easy feat. So I've been writing since I was 10 years old, but really seriously since college. So that's a long time ago already. So I've
about 3 years?
More like 12, yeah. So 12. So I got an MFA after my undergraduate with Fairfield University. I did a low residency program. And since then, I've just been writing. I have a stack of manuscripts like so many other writers do. I've had a few agents do on submission. This is the agent I currently have is my third. So it was just a matter of finding the right fit or finding an agent who was able to find an editor that had the right fit. And then, so all sorts of different manuscripts that I'm now going to hope to revisit, and some that I'll just delete and shred. And then the path to publication. So that happened really fast. So with 10 years of all sorts of rejections, and revisions and re-envisioning, Mercy House took me about 4 years to write and get to the point where I got my agent. And I think I submitted to her in April, we signed in May, and I had a publishing contract in August. And not only that, but I had, so Amy Schumer is the blurb here. So I met with her in August too. So it was like this crazy 10 years, nothing's happening. Well, plenty's happening. I'm writing plenty, but no publication, no big publication. And then all of a sudden it was just like, do you want to take a call with Amy Schumer? Do you want to take a call with so-and-so? And I'm like, it was just absurd. And I was pregnant. And so there was just like a lot happening. So I'd like get off the couch because I had morning sickness and I'd take a call with someone in LA.
She was pregnant too, actually?
And she ended up being pregnant right after me. So we might've been pregnant at the same time when we met, but we didn't tell each other. And we went to a sushi restaurant. So, yeah, so it was just a thrill and surreal. And I got off the phone with Amy Schumer and just was laughing like, I can't believe this is my life. And then I was sobbing and I was like, I can't believe this is my life. And then the publication, and it's just been a dream ever since.
Amazing. I think we have time for one more question. And well, maybe we'll do two. This one's a little bit of a tough question. Someone wanted to know about how you dealt with some of the horrific side of nuns' behavior toward young pregnant women and girls, and the cruelty that, that happened, and the babies that were taken away, and, that very difficult side of this.
Sure.
You delve into that in the book.
Right. So we know that exists. Those weren't the experiences of my characters. So I was just kind of inside the life of Sister Evelyn, and she as an individual didn't commit those kinds of things. Although, not to do any spoilers, but it does deal with pregnancy. So I hope to have demonstrated a lot of her internal conflict. She is not sure if she has done the right thing, and that haunts her, and it's something that she struggles with throughout the book.
Right. I'm gonna end on a more lighter question, which is, someone would like an autographed copy of Mercy House. Is there any way that they could go about getting that?
Well, depending on where they live, so I'm in Beverly, and I know Copper Dog has autographed copies. When I did those, the Beverly Farms bookstore wasn't yet open. But if they are also local and we want to support the bookstore that is supporting the festival, I'd be happy to work out with that bookstore a safe way to sign. Or you can contact me through my website, and we can figure out something else if that's not feasible.
Great. Well, Elena, thank you so much for being here, and everyone, all our participants, thank you so much for being at one of the first 2 online sessions of the Newburyport Literary
And 100 people, that's huge.
Yes.
I'm so excited. Thank you so much for coming.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Please join us for other events, and thank you so much again. Take care.
Thank you very much.